Transformers. It's literally in the name. Transformers. Most would say if a Transformer figure doesn't transform, then it's not a Transformer. However, throughout the years, there have been plenty of transforming Transformer figures that have varied in size, price, and functionality. So today I thought it'd be fun to talk about these types of figures. What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Speakerhead, and today we're going to be talking about if non-transforming Transformers should exist. But before we get into this video, if you enjoy any of this sort of content, make sure to like and subscribe. It really does help me out. I made it a personal goal to reach 1,000 subscribers before 2024, so if you want to help me reach that goal, make sure to subscribe. Also, a friendly reminder that 1 like equals 1 pat for my little buddy Doug here. Say hi, Doug. Finally, I want to mention if you enjoy any of the music in this video or just want to support the channel in general, it's all part of my royalty-free music label, Speakerhead Studios. All the music on this label is completely royalty-free, so go ahead and use it for any of your content creating needs. But now that we got all that out of the way, let's talk about some non-transforming Transformers. So to start this discussion off, I personally own a few different types of non-transforming Transformer figures. Some of them are pretty awesome and honestly some of my favorite figures, while some of them I question why I still own or why they even exist. But after looking at all these figures, I decided to split them up in two different categories: posable figures and non-posable figures. The reason why I'm splitting these into two different categories is because I feel it would be unfair to rank the non-posing figures with the posable ones, because both types of figures serve different purposes in each collection. But the first type of figure we're going to talk about is posable figures. Usually these types of figures should have better articulation compared to the transforming counterparts. And the reason why is because there's no sort of transformation element going into these non-transforming figures. And a lot of these figures do have fairly decent articulation, even down to some of the cheaper lines such as the RED line. But something I've realized for a lot of these posable non-transforming Transformers is that the more you pay for them, usually the better articulation they have. A good example of this is actually going to be the RED line, which I mentioned before. Now the articulation on these guys isn't terrible, but considering that they're non-transforming Transformers, I'd wish that they have a little bit better articulation. Because as I said before, there's no sort of transforming engineering that needs to cut into these guys' budget, so it should all go into sculpt and posability. However, once you start getting in the more expensive figures, I'd say about $50+, a lot of these figures do have pretty fantastic articulation. Now I do want to specify before anyone mentions it, this is not counting the Super 7 figures and similar figures like that, because honestly I think those figures are pretty junky. I'm sorry if you collect them and you enjoy them, I'm happy you enjoy them, but I really just don't like them. But some of these bigger non-transforming figures such as 3-0 and Hot Toys have fantastic articulation. And I'll be honest with you all right now, that 3-0 Soundwave I own is my favorite Soundwave, if not my favorite figure throughout my entire collection. Because there's just so many amazing features about this thing that I absolutely love. Besides it being massive, it has a beautiful paint job with this nice battle damage look to it, which is fantastic to me. And then on top of that, his posability is top notch with so many extra details that get shown when he actually moves certain parts. For example, when you move the knee, a bunch of extra detail comes out and is exposed, which looks amazing. And then also along with his elbows. And then also when you manipulate the head, there's two different parts that articulate that exposes more detail. Now I could go on for another 10 minutes like this, but I'll save that for a review if I ever do one on this figure. But even though the Soundwave figure doesn't transform, it is my favorite Transformer in my entire collection. But now that we've talked about some posable non-transforming Transformers, let's talk about the non-posable ones. And these are just going to be your run-of-the-mill statues. Now these can vary in price just like the posable figures, going from cheap with the Zoteki statue, then going all the way up to prices that you and I wish we could afford for a single action figure. But at that point, you're not really paying for a figure but more of a piece of art. But I think a lot of these figures are pretty cool in their own ways. As many longtime viewers know, besides Transformer figures, I like to also collect anime figures as well. And something I've personally decided to do for my anime collection is to only collect figures that are in cool positions. As cool as some of these figures look, I personally just find some of them really boring if they're just standing in a regular A stance. And this is more specifically for non-posable figures, aka statues. And the reason why I think this specifically for statues is because if you're going to own a statue that's going to be stuck in one position, you might as well have it looking really cool at all times. Because with a posable figure, you're able to change the position of it, you can have it in an A stance every once in a while. But with not being able to articulate a statue at all, it's really boring to just keep looking at the same pose over and over and over again. And yes, I'm fully aware that I'm not able to change the position of any of these figures as well. But I'm going to put two different pictures of two different figures on the screen, and you tell me which one looks more interesting. But specifically for Transformer statues, I either want them to be extremely detailed or I want them to be in a really cool pose. Because with Transformers statues and the Transformers being giant robots, I feel like you can add a lot of sculpted detail and paint work on there, and essentially make it look like these Transformers jumped into the real world. And going back to the 3-0 figure, Fast, if this thing couldn't pose at all, I still would be really happy if it was in an awesome position. And pretty much any pose you put them in makes them look like they're statues, which is what I love about them. And I do plan on picking up more of these guys because they are really awesome figures. But now we talked about both types of non-transforming Transformers, let's get back to the question of if these guys should exist. Now, as I stated before, most people would say a non-transforming Transformer wouldn't technically be a Transformer, and you would be correct about that. Because most people identify the Transformer brand with a robot being able to transform into some sort of alternate mode. But even though these figures don't transform, I think that they are worth having around. Because even though G1 Transformer designs are fairly easy to pull off for a robot in alt mode, some of these more complicated designs from later series such as Transformers Prime make it a little bit more difficult to make a perfect Transformer figure of it. Because no matter how hard Hasbro or any other company tries, they're not going to be able to make perfect one-to-one robot modes for these figures. A good example of this is going to be RC from Transformers Prime. Now, her figures that have been released have all been pretty good, but they've never been 100% accurate to the screen model. And that's where the RED line came in, because they gave us an amazing looking Prime RC that looks like you pulled her straight out of the screen. And an even better example of this is going to be Prime Knockout. So his toys alt mode looked pretty accurate, but his robot mode looked pretty much nothing like him. But now with the RED line, we're able to get a screen accurate Prime Knockout, and he looks amazing. Even though mine doesn't have any red for his eyes, so it's just a black abyss. But I believe a lot of these characters, specifically from Transformers Prime, aren't able to actually get a good representation of them if they actually transform. Now, that's not to say that all the Transformers Prime figures were bad. Honestly, a lot of them were pretty good, and I do eventually want to pick them up. But for a lot of these characters, it isn't really plausible to get a screen accurate figure of them. So let's bring it back to the question, should non-transforming Transformers exist? And I personally think these figures should exist. Let's be honest, a lot of people when they buy figures, especially masterpiece figures, end up buying the figure, putting it on their shelf, and never touching it again. Especially when it comes to masterpiece figures, because there have been so many different masterpiece collectors that I've heard that don't transform a single one of their figures. And that's including me. I really don't transform any of my masterpiece figures. To me, they're essentially just big, heavy, posable action figures. And that's where I think having non-transforming Transformers would be a good thing. Because I'll be honest with you, if some companies started releasing non-transforming G1 Transformers that were MP scale, I would buy those up all day. As long as they had the same articulation as the transforming counterparts, I would be absolutely fine buying those. Because besides the company focusing only on the bot mode looking great, I guarantee the price of them would be a lot lower as well. And for those who are still against buying non-transforming Transformers, I still completely understand that. That's why I buy Legend Scale Transformers, because I love transforming my figures. It's one of the best parts about them. So taking that element away, it really does take away from the fun factor of the figures. But once again, I feel like a non-transforming figure with amazing posability and fantastic paint job can go a long ways for someone. But once again, coming back to that question, should non-transforming Transformers exist? Once again, yes, I think they should exist because they are all fantastic, amazing figures. Except for some of them. But guys, that's going to be my discussion on non-transforming Transformers. Let me know what you think down below. Let me know if you already own some, or if you plan on picking some up in the future. But if you guys enjoyed this content, make sure to like and subscribe. It really does help me out. Finally, once again, if you enjoyed the music in this video or just want to support the channel in general, it's all part of my royalty-free music label, Speakerhead Studios, link in the description. But that's going to be it for me, guys. I appreciate you checking out the video, and I'll catch all y'all in the next one. Peace.